Okay, so leadership.
Yep.
Everyone's talking about it, right?
Right.
But what about a kind of leadership you don't usually see in those business books?
Right.
That's what we're getting into today, Indigenous leadership. And I'll be honest,
Yeah.
my first thoughts are, those kind of cliche images,
Yeah.
peace pipes, maybe a stoic chief in full headdress.
It's a common image for sure, but it just scratches the surface.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to really go deep, we've got some great sources lined up.
Yeah.
We're looking at Living Indigenous Leadership. It's a book that gets into real stories and observations from Indigenous communities.
Sounds fascinating.
And then to mix it up, we're also going to pull from the SAGE Handbook of Leadership,
Okay.
specifically a chapter called Indigenous Leadership as a Conscious Adaptive System. That one's a bit more theoretical.
Interesting. So we've got like a real world view and then some theory to connect it all together. I like it.
Right. It's super interesting. So we were talking about ideas that are like rooted in tradition, but also adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
You ready to jump in?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so when we talk about Indigenous leadership, where do we even begin?
Well, a good place to start is with the land itself. See, in many indigenous cultures, leadership isn't about holding a title or a specific position. It's way more about this deep connection to the land and to ancestry.
I've been thinking about that connection to land and ancestry,
Yeah.
even just with my own family history. It's like when you know where your people came from, what they went through, their values, it shapes you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And in many indigenous cultures, that connection to the land is just as important as knowing your family history. It's about being part of something so much bigger than just yourself.
I can see that. It's like when you're out in nature and you just feel this sense of belonging,
Yeah.
a sense of peace.
Exactly. And that's grounding, right?
Totally
And
right.
that grounding, it brings a sense of responsibility, a long-term vision.
It's like that 7 generations principle, right?
Hmm.
Where decisions made today consider their impact 7 generations into the future.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those consequences that go way beyond our own lifetimes.
Wow. That's a powerful way to look at it. So it's like expanding your circle of consideration, not just your immediate family or even your own needs, but generations to come.
And that right there highlights a key difference between many indigenous and Western leadership styles. It's not about, individual ambition or short-term wins. It's about the community and making sure it's taken care of for generations.
So it's less about what mark you leave on the world and more about making sure it thrives even when you're gone.
You got it. And that sense of community, of collective responsibility, that's another big part of indigenous leadership.
Right, like that saying, it takes a village.
Exactly.
You can see that in how indigenous communities are structured, how decisions get made, how leadership comes about.
It's not a hierarchy with like one person at the top.
Mhm.
It's more like this network of strength,
Oh,
a
yeah.
web of relationships where everyone has a part to play.
Okay, so it's more collaborative, leadership is more shared.
You got it. And in that network, you don't just get influence because of a title or position. You earn it through respect, through service.
And that makes me think the moccasin telegraph,
Exactly.
which sounds way cooler than it probably is, unless you think efficient communication is cool.
Right.
But it's really about those fast, informal networks, right?
Word of mouth, but on another level.
And it's all built on trust.
Yeah,
People knowing they can rely on each other. That's a form of leadership too, isn't it?
it is. And speaking of relationships, it gets really interesting when you have different cultural systems interacting.
Oh, absolutely. Indigenous leaders often have to walk between worlds, as they say,
Right.
honoring their own values, but also engaging with the dominant culture, which might do things totally differently.
It's a balancing act.
For sure. It makes you think about the tension between what they call Indian country and mainstream society.
Yeah.
Those differences in values, governance, even how the world should work.
It's a lot to navigate.
It is. And this is where I think the concept of cultural match comes in, right?
Absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting for a lot of people.
How so?
Well, it challenges the idea that there's only one way to lead,
Okay.
one right way. There's this project, the Harvard Project. They've been studying indigenous leadership for a long time. And they found that trying to force a one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work.
Well, yeah. Different communities have different histories, values, ways of doing things. Trying to force them into the same mold
Exactly.
is not going to work.
Yeah.
So instead of imposing these outside models, it's more about understanding each community and supporting leadership that makes sense for them.
Precisely.
So if there isn't one right way to lead, what are some things that we see in Indigenous leadership, no matter the culture? So if there isn't one right way to lead, What are some things that we see in Indigenous leadership, no matter the culture?
Well, one thing you see a lot of is this emphasis on interconnection, like understanding how everything's related, how we're all connected, part of this web of life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the role of women is huge.
Oh, for sure. It's great to finally be looking at leadership that doesn't just default to a very male-dominated structure.
Yeah, and it's not just about having women in charge. It's about recognizing their strengths,
Right.
the different perspective they bring.
Right.
There's a focus on building consensus, persuasion over force, nurturing those relationships.
It really makes you realize how limited those typical leadership models can be.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've been looking at this small box
Yeah.
when there's this whole world of different ways to lead.
And speaking of that, one of the coolest things I've come across in Indigenous cultures is this idea of embodied concepts.
Embodied concepts. Okay, break that down for me.
So it's like this. The mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
They're not separate. They're all woven together.
Okay.
They're all part of who you are and how you lead.
So it's not just about what's in your head. It's about how you are in the world, how you treat people.
Exactly. Bringing your full self to the table, your heart, your gut, all of it. And that actually makes you a better leader.
I love that. So often we're told to do the opposite.
Right.
Leave your personal life at home, be this robot at work.
It's true. But Indigenous leadership says, no, your humanity, that's a good thing. It's what helps you connect, build trust.
It's like those leaders who just have this presence about them.
Yeah.
It's not that they're the loudest, but you listen when they talk.
It's authentic.
Yeah. You can just tell they're genuine.
And a lot of that comes from this deep connection to their own culture, their stories.
Speaking of stories,
Yeah.
we have to talk about that
Right.
because it's more than just entertainment, isn't it?
Way more. It's woven into everything.
Mm.
Storytelling is how they pass down knowledge, keep traditions alive, stay connected to their history, to each other.
It's like when you hear a song
Mm-hmm.
or read a book and it just stays with you.
Yeah.
It's not just information. You're really feeling it.
And that's the thing about Indigenous storytelling. It's not just facts. It's about wisdom, values, a whole way of looking at the world.
So it's about keeping those traditions alive,
Yeah.
not as something from the past, but as part of the present.
Exactly. And it's not just about the stories that are told. It's also about the silences,
Oh, wow. The silences. What do you mean?
Well, sometimes what's not said can be just as powerful as what is.
That is interesting. So what can we learn from that, from the silences?
Well, it reminds us to listen.
Okay.
That listening is just as important as talking, maybe even more so. It's about creating space for other voices, other stories.
So it's like leadership isn't always about having the answers.
Right.
It's about being open to what other people have to say.
Exactly. And being comfortable not knowing everything.
Mm-hmm. Being comfortable for a little quiet sometimes.
Yes. And in those moments, those quiet moments, that's often where the best insights come from.
I can see that. When I just push to fill the silence, I miss those aha moments.
It's true. That kind of listening, it's important for everything, not just leadership.
Yeah.
For real relationships, creating a world where people feel heard.
And when those voices who haven't been heard, DO, start to speak up, that's where we see the power of story.
Yeah.
The power of tradition, especially in Indigenous communities, feeling these incredible acts of activism, of resilience. It's like it takes so much strength to hold on to your traditions, your values, when there's all this pressure to conform,
Yeah, it really does. And you see that resilience playing out in so many ways.
Oh, yeah. And it's not just about survival, it's about thriving.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how much this resilience connects with some really cool ideas in science, like complex adaptive systems.
Okay, yeah, you keep mentioning conscious adaptive systems.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly does that mean again?
Well, imagine a forest, right? You've got trees, plants, animals, all these different pieces interacting.
Right.
It's constantly changing, adapting to the environment. That's a complex adaptive system.
So if something changes, like a drought, the whole system has to adjust to survive.
Exactly. And it's not just forests. It's also true for communities, organizations, even whole societies. They're always evolving, responding to pressure.
Which makes you think about Indigenous communities. I mean, they've faced so much change over the years, colonization, forced assimilation,
Absolutely.
not to mention all the environmental challenges.
It's a lot to navigate.
They've had to become incredibly adaptable just to keep going.
Exactly. And that's why understanding Indigenous leadership is so important today. We're in a world that's changing faster than ever, right?
Oh, for sure. Climate change, globalization.
And we need leaders who can handle that, who can guide us through all of it in a way that's good for everyone.
So it's not just about reacting to change, but about understanding how it all connects.
Yes, like that butterfly effect idea.
Yep.
Even small actions can have huge consequences.
It reminds me of that proverb. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children.
Exactly.
Such a powerful message. We have to make choices that are good for future generations.
Absolutely. That sense of responsibility, that awareness of our connection to everything, that's what Indigenous leadership is all about.
It's less about like being in charge and more about empowering others,
Yes.
realizing that we're in this together.
And that's why it's so important to pay attention to the wisdom of Indigenous cultures. You know, it's not just something from the past. It's got so much to teach us about how to move forward.
I am definitely taking that away from this conversation.
Yeah.
It's not just about skills or techniques.
Right.
It's a way of looking at the world, at ourselves, at how we treat each other, how we treat the planet.
It's about respect, balance, and knowing we're all part of something bigger.
Exactly. And maybe if we can open ourselves up to these different ways of seeing things, different ways of leading, we can create a better future.
I think so too. People are hungry for a different kind of leadership, you know?
Mm-hmm.
One that's about integrity, compassion, connection. Those leaders are out there making a difference.
They are quietly working away all over the world.
And that's a good thought to end on, don't you think? It's not about saying any one culture has all the answers.
Right.
It's about listening to each other, learning from each other, finding inspiration wherever we can.
I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me. This has been amazing. And to everyone listening, I hope you'll keep thinking about these ideas, asking questions, and maybe even find ways to bring a little more of that Indigenous wisdom into your own life.